Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Brazos Valley, or Brazos UU for short. My name is Pam Johnson, and I am serving as your worship assistant today. I come to this church because I never felt comfortable reciting the doctrine of my prior church. I feel that I am able to grow and be a better person by affirming and following the 7 principles of the UU Church and incorporating the church covenant in my daily life. We are a welcoming congregation, which means we celebrate and welcome all people of diverse sexual orientations and gender identities. We also strive to welcome people across diversities of race, age, ability, immigration status, and belief. We are also a reproductive freedom congregation, which means that we trust and respect women for their reproductive decisions. So whoever you are, wherever you have come from, wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. We encourage everyone to visit our website, brazos-uu.org. During this time of pandemic and in the midst of our planned building project, the website and our weekly services are our church home. If you might like to contribute your musical talents, if you have a great story to share about your life's journey, or if you have a passion for social justice, we would love to hear from you. If you are interested in getting involved, you can find opportunities on our website, brazos-uu.org. To learn more about our community and what is happening, you can join our email list or our monthly newsletter. And you can also find us on social media by searching UUCBV. Our service today is about accepting reality. How do we deal with the gap between what we wish for and what is? How do we possibly reckon with someone as vast and complicated as the world, much less the universe?
Our call to worship this morning comes from Norman V. Naylor. He writes, "Do not leave your cares at the door. Do not leave there your pain, your sorrow, or your joys. Bring them with you into this place of acceptance and forgiveness. Place them on the common altar of life and offer them to the possibility of your worship. Come then and offer yourself to potential transformation by the creative process that flows through you and all life. Come, let us worship."
Now I invite you to light your own chalice if you have one, as I light our chalice today. Please say our chalice lighting words with me. We light the chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, as a beacon of hope for all who seek justice, dignity, and compassion, and in celebration of the life of truth and meaning we share together. Now, all please join me in saying our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Today's Time for All Ages is by Kenneth Collier. It's called How Coyote Lost His Songs, Music, and Dance. One day it occurred to Coyote that he didn't need any other creatures. There he was, sitting pretty all by himself. What did he need anyone else for? He had his songs, his flute, his drum, and his fire. He had his dancing and his huge teepee. Besides, all the other creatures were kind of strange. There was Rabbit with his huge ears and enormous legs, and all he ever did was run around. There was Moose with that absurd head of antlers, wandering up to his knees in marshes. And there were all those pesky birds flitting around, twittering, and never letting Coyote nap. Ridiculous! Who needed them? Not Coyote. So he decided to just leave them all behind. He picked himself up, and he wandered off, trying to find a place where he could be alone. Entirely alone. With none of these silly and absurd creatures to bother him. Where he could dance his dances by himself, and sing and play his flute and drum for no one but himself. A place where he wouldn't have to share his fire. A place where he could nap in peace. As Coyote was leaving, Rabbit happened to see him and tagged along. At first he ran ahead with his big legs, and then he ran back, and then ahead, and then back. Coyote ignored him, hoping he would just go away. "Hey, Coyote!" Rabbit yelled. "Where are you going?" Coyote ignored him. Rabbit ran ahead and came back. "Hey, Coyote," he said. "Know what's on the other side of that hill?" "I do. I just saw it." Coyote was curious, but he ignored Rabbit and just kept on walking. Rabbit ran on ahead and came back. "Hey, Coyote, there's something over there where you're headed, and you ought to know about it. I just saw it. Want me to tell you about it?" Well, Coyote did want to know, but he just ignored Rabbit, hoping he'd go away and leave him alone. Ridiculous Rabbit. Rabbit's feelings were a bit hurt. "Coyote, you know what? You're crazy." And he went away. That night, a funny thing happened. Coyote stopped and built his fire and sat down to sing as he did every night, but as hard as he tried, he couldn't remember any songs. And so all he could do was play his flute and drum and dance a little, but he couldn't sing, and the night was strangely quiet. The next day, Coyote was off again, feeling a little sad and a little strange, but he still wanted to get away from these ridiculous creatures with their absurd ways of being. Before long, he came to a marsh. It was so wide he didn't see how he could go around it, and shrugging his shoulders, he started to go through it. Pretty soon he ran into Moose, who was, as usual, up to his knees in mud and weeds. Moose lifted his huge head of antlers when he saw Coyote coming. "Well, hello, Coyote," he said. "What brings you way out here to the marshes?" Coyote ignored him and kept looking for a way to cross the mud. Moose swung his great head this way and that, a little miffed that Coyote was ignoring him. "Coyote, if you're looking for a dry path, I could help you," he said. Coyote looked right at him and said nothing. What a ridiculous creature, Coyote thought to himself. If I had such silly things growing out of my head, I wouldn't let anyone see them. Moose's feelings were really hurt by now. "You know what, Coyote? You're crazy." And Moose walked away. Coyote finally did find his way across the marsh and went on. That night something strange happened. Again Coyote built his fire and tried to make his music, but not only had he forgotten his songs, now he couldn't remember how to play the flute and drum. All he could do was dance around the fire, and the night was frighteningly silent. The next day Coyote was really upset and a little afraid, but he had decided that he would get away from all these silly creatures, and get away he would. So he set off again. This time he came to a little stream that flowed down out of the mountains. All along its banks were bushes and flowers, and it was beautiful and still and cool. And since he was thirsty and a little tired, Coyote took a long drink, sat down, and decided to take a nap. As they often are, these bushes were filled with birds, and just as Coyote was about to go to sleep, the little birds began to tweet. They started singing their songs. This was exactly what he wanted to get away from. It really made him angry that the birds wouldn't let him sleep in peace. And he was a little afraid and jealous that they could sing, and he had forgotten his songs, and he had forgotten even how to sing. And so he leapt up and snarled and barked at them to frighten them away. And it worked. They flew up and off. But one bird, a little braver than the others, said to him, being careful just to fly out of his reach, "Coyote, what are you doing?" And off she went. Coyote was pleased with himself for getting rid of the birds, and so he decided to stay right there. That night he made his fire, but the strangest thing happened. Not only could he no longer sing, not only could he no longer play his flute and drum, but now he couldn't even remember how to dance. All Coyote could do was stare into the fire and think about what he had lost. Finally, he fell asleep and dreamed. In his dream, White Buffalo Woman appeared to him and asked him why he was so sad and scared. Coyote explained that now he had lost his songs and his music and dance. He didn't know what to do, and he was afraid that he would lose his fire next. White Buffalo Woman asked him why he was out here all alone. Coyote explained he was tired of being surrounded all the time by those silly creatures who looked strange and acted strange and lived such ridiculous lives, and he had decided he would live by himself away from them all. "Coyote," said Buffalo Woman, "don't you understand that your music and your dance, even your fire, are nothing but the spirits of those creatures who are different from you? As you drove them away, they left even your heart, and took their spirits with them. If you want your music and dance back, you must go back to your friends and accept them back into your heart. Only then will you be able to go on." The next morning, when Coyote awoke, he couldn't remember the dream, but when the birds began to sing, as they always do in the morning, he sat still and listened to them. And he began to go back the way he had come. The night when he built his fire that night, he could remember his dance. And the next day he went on back the way he had come and chanced upon Moose, and he asked Moose how to cross the marsh. That night when he built his fire, he remembered how to play his flute and drum, and the night was not so lonely. And the next day he still went back the way he had come, and suddenly up ran Rabbit. Coyote ran with Rabbit and played and had a good old time. And that night, when he had built his fire, the air was filled with Coyote's songs. And never again did Coyote forget how easily he could lose his music and his dance and even his fire. So ends our time for all ages. Today's prayer is by Kyle Johnson. It's called Embracing the Double-Edged Universe. Mystery of the universe. You who some think of not as a being among other beings, but as the very ground of being itself. Thank you for this day, for another sunrise, another chance for us to witness the wonder of creation. We know that yours is creation that is truly double-edged, a yin-yang universe, for it is indeed one in which the life-giving flame can also burn. It is also one in which the dark, cold, misting rain gives rebirth to spring. And it is one in which, paradoxically, our acquaintance with pain and sorrow can help us better appreciate pleasure and joy. Help us then to have the courage and strength to embrace it all, to embrace what is. Help us, we who are similarly double-edged, whose love for those closest to us can so easily provoke our own tribal instincts and prejudices, whose own pain, rather than fostering empathy and compassion, may turn us inward to dig moats, to build walls rather than bridges. Help us embrace this double-edged yin-yang universe with courage and strength, but above all, help us to do so in the spirit of love and compassion. For this, it seems, is our eternal challenge, as it is also the wellspring of our eternal salvation. Please join me in a time of quiet reflection. Amen. As we do each week, we take a time to share those joys and concerns, sorrows and milestones most on our hearts and minds, knowing that in this community, in this time and place, they are held by all of us together. If you have something to share, whether it's a concern for the whole world or for yourself and those you love, please feel free to share it in the chat box at any time. We lift up a few concerns among us all. For all of those who are suffering with the effects of the coronavirus pandemic, for the people of India where the virus is raging out of control, for those in our own country experiencing medical issues or supporting family and friends, or who have experienced job loss and other turmoil, we lift you up and we hold you in our hearts and minds this Sunday. We remember, as we do each week, that Black lives matter. And as we strive for justice, equity, and anti-racism, we know that until Black lives matter as much as all other lives in this country, our work will not be finished. To these, we add the concerns of our own hearts and minds. Again, I invite you to share in the chat box. If there's something you can't share there right now, know that all that goes unspoken or unwritten is nonetheless held by each and every one of us. For the concerns and joys of this community, we give thanks and we support one another. Amen.
Today's reading is entitled Einstein on Time by Ken Nye. Someone told me once that Einstein thought time is a variable. That is to say that time is not a constant. Are you following this? When I was a child, a year was a year. Now a year is a week. When I was a child, a week was a whole bunch of days of limitless possibilities, so numerous that I planned ahead only as far as the afternoon. Now a week is a few meetings interspersed with frenetic activity that I have apparently convinced myself is important. Never mind enjoying the moment. Never mind stopping to smell the roses. Yesterday, A lifetime was forever, immeasurable, like a light year. But today, swirling in a mix of tomorrows and yesterdays, a light year is comprehensible, measurable, and finite. But let's not talk cosmic stuff. Let's not throw in big words to impress. If Einstein was right, and I think he was, where is the throttle? How do I slow this thing down? Our second reading is entitled Cosmos by Carl Sagan. The cosmos is all that is, or ever was, or ever will be. Our feeblest contemplations of the cosmos stir us. There is a tingling in the spine, a catch in the voice, a faint sensation, as if a distant memory of falling from a height. We know we are approaching the greatest of mysteries. The size and age of the cosmos are beyond ordinary human understanding. Lost, somewhere between immensity and eternity, is our tiny planetary home. In a cosmic perspective, most human concerns seem insignificant, even petty. And yet our species is young and curious and brave and shows much promise. In the last few millennia, we have made the most astonishing and unexpected discoveries about the cosmos and our place within it, explorations that are exhilarating to consider. They remind us that humans have evolved to wonder, that understanding is a joy, and that knowledge is prerequisite to survival. I believe our future depends on how well we know this cosmos in which we float like a mote of dust in the morning sky. Those explorations require skepticism and imagination both. Imagination will often carry us to worlds that never were, but without it, we go nowhere. Skepticism enables us to distinguish fancy from fact, to test our speculations. The cosmos is rich beyond measure in elegant facts, in exquisite interrelationships, in the subtle machinery of awe.
Hi, everybody. I'm excited to share a song with you today that I really love. It's a setting of the metta meditation from the Buddha. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. And may I be happy. Starting with a practice of compassion towards ourselves, and then gradually extending that compassion outward to the entire world. So that first, if we can extend compassion to ourselves, we can then extend compassion to the people that we know, and maybe the people that we see, and maybe the people that we haven't even heard about and don't even know about, is the idea. So I'm going to teach you this melody. I learned it from a colleague of mine, Amy Menard, and I wrote a harmonization. So I'll sing a line and invite you to sing that line back to me. It goes like this. May I be filled with loving kindness. Try that. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. Your turn. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. Together. May I be peaceful peaceful and at ease, and may I be happy. The last line. And may I be happy. So in a second, we will sing that all again, and then we'll change the word I to the word you, and then to we, and finally to all. And between each verse, I'm going to just play a little instrumental music, and I just invite us to really meditate during that time on what we're singing and what we're saying, and endeavor to feel some of that compassion for ourselves and for others. Let's start with May I Be Filled. And may I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. And may I be happy. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. And may you be happy. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. And may we be happy. May all be filled with loving kindness. May all be well. May all be peaceful and at ease. And may all be happy. Thanks, everyone.
Get used to disappointment. One of my all-time favorite movies, The Princess Bride, prominently features that line. Get used to disappointment. It's said during a sword fight early in the movie, one combatant is desperate to know who his masked opponent is. The response, get used to disappointment. They continue dueling for some time, and it ends with him disappointed. Now, in this month, we've explored acceptance in our worship, accepting ourselves, accepting others, and today, accepting reality, the universe, everything. In accepting ourselves, we talked about speaking truth and about being forgiving. We're doing our best here. And in accepting others, we talked about loving others even if we don't like them. Accepting doesn't mean we have to agree with others whose ideas or behaviors are abhorrent to us, but it does mean honoring the inherent worth and dignity, as it's phrased in our UUA principles, of all people. And so today I want to think about what acceptance really means. How can it be powerful and useful, and how it might be limiting for us too? What does it mean to accept, to acknowledge, to have some understanding of, to be in tune with, to be okay with? I think it's all of those things to some degree, to different degrees. And there are some caveats about the limits of acceptance we'll get to. Now, I recognize that the way I started this sermon might not be the most spiritually uplifting sentiment. Get used to disappointment. And yet, this is perhaps one of life's great lessons. I think of newborns, for instance. What must it be like to be taken from the warm, weightless embrace of the womb and shoved, often quite violently, out into a world that is shockingly bright, that is cold, that is a place where hunger is now constantly rearing its head? Talk about getting used to disappointment. One of my great lessons in life has been just that. Not only getting used to disappointment, but learning to accept it even. Learning to accept that I cannot do everything. That I will, for instance, never play in a top flight professional sports league. Now, that was probably always the reality, but certainly at age 40, the truth of that statement is now pretty hard to argue with. Is that disappointing? It certainly was to younger Christian, and there's a little piece of me for whom it still is. But for the most part, no, and I think that's the acceptance piece. You come to accept your limitations, that not everything is possible, that not all you want, or wanted at least, will be something you can have. And what you want changes over time anyway, of course. You come to accept these things, or you become bitter and disillusioned. I imagine all of us have done that at least a little bit from time to time. Of course, there are times when you're not disappointed. I've talked about and I've written about my trip to Yosemite National Park several years ago. There's so many things in the world, in life, that you hear all the talk about how wonderful they are, about how amazing. And they've been built so much up in your mind that when you finally get there, it can be a letdown. Yosemite is not one of those things. It's difficult to take in the valley, the sheer thousands feet tall granite cliffs. You're not used to seeing something on that scale. And at first, your brain wants to think that they must just be a few 100 feet tall, perhaps, which would be impressive enough. But then you see the 50 or 100 foot tall pines at the cliff base, and looking far, 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 far up, you see more trees at the very top. and that wall of rock stretches a long, long way in between those two things. You start to do some quick estimates in your head. Yes, that rock wall is dozens, no, hundreds of trees worth tall, which must be thousands of feet. Yosemite, like so few things, lives up to the hype. The few days I spent there some years ago were incredible. Being there with a good friend and with one of my sons was an amazing time that will stay with me forever. There's a few other things I can think of in my life that I've had a similar experience with. The Eiffel Tower, the Grand Canyon, Crater Lake, the Statue of David in Florence. These things come to mind. And perhaps you have a few of your own. Maybe the pyramids or your favorite spot out in nature. These things that are as great or greater than we could possibly expect. We live in a world that's so full of hype and of disappointment. So the few things that don't disappoint truly stand out. And this then is another kind of acceptance. I think it's a subset perhaps of awe. Some things are so great, so magnificent, so live up to the stories we've been told that it's hard for us to take in or believe them. We can barely trust our senses. Love, in my experience, can be like this too. How do you take in that wash of feelings you experience in love with a partner or your child or your best friend or your favorite family member? I'm not sure acceptance is even the right word for it, but there isn't a simple word I know that means come to grips with something amazing and understand that even though it seems unbelievable, it must be true. This too then is acceptance, coming to grips with things that are better than we could have imagined. And I think there must be at least one more kind of acceptance, which is maybe the same or at least similar to capitulation. And this I want to explore a little with caution. It can be easy to give in to overwhelming realities. It would be easy to say, for instance, that climate change is so vast and so bad that it doesn't even matter anymore. We might as well give up. And in some sense, this is acceptance, I suppose, but it's certainly not a healthy form of it. We have to come to grips with realities, accept the truth as it is, especially when it's unpleasant. But that doesn't mean we have to stop trying to make things better or that we should. You'll never hear me advocate that we should stop trying to make the world better. I might say, though, that the particular cause or strategy we're using is the wrong one, or it's not worth the cost. Yes, that I might say, but never that we shouldn't try to do better. Accepting reality doesn't mean that we don't work to make a better world. It means being aware of how things are and knowing that we are limited beings. It means being aware of both our power and our limitations. Acceptance is necessary for sure, but also with limits we must be cognizant of. It means holding in tension the reality of how things are and a vision of how things could be. Both of those things at the same time. It means accepting disappointment and surprise, failure and wild success, all in the same lifetime, sometimes in the same hour, the same moment. In short, I think of the words of the Serenity Prayer, adapted from words by the theologian Reinhold Niebuhr. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. So, friends, get used to disappointment, but also learn to accept that reality is sometimes better than we had hoped. Don't give in to complacency. Accept reality, but know that you and I and all of us together have a part in shaping it. We can make a difference, starting with accepting the world as it is and knowing how we wish it could be. Amen.
If we were having worship service in person, this is the time when we would pass the basket. This church shares the proceeds of the offering plate donation every week to support important nonprofit organizations with which we work. This month, we are proud to support the Brazos Valley African American Museum in Bryan, Texas. The Brazos UU believes in their mission, which is to explore, develop, preserve, and present the cultural history and heritage of African Americans. Please be as generous as you can. If you wish to make an offering, you can mail your check, or for your convenience, you can donate online. On our homepage at brazos-uu.org, you can find our mailing address at the bottom. And at the top of the page, you will see the Donate Here link. In the chat box, you will see that link now. May each of us look into our hearts. How much love, how much generosity, how much faith, how much gratitude, how much hope is there? We give thanks for these gifts we have given, for those we receive, and for each other.
To see our world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour.
To see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour.
To see our world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity
Now, please join me in extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we gather together again.
Friends, it's been so good to be together and talk about how we can accept reality, how we can be agents of change even as we learn to live with the truth as it is. May each of us go forward from this place, accepting the world as it is, but knowing our part in making it better too. Our worship is ended and our service begins.